even though I like this song, the one that I prefer is the Aretha Franklin "Respect."
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's why my website is respectforyou.com, because
Well, maybe
that's
we'll
what
close
we
out
demand.
the segment with respect there. Why don't you guys cue that up? We'll play it before we leave here. All right, Rick, we got you on, and we were talking via text and all that. I saw an article in the paper, and the headline read, "Facial recognition tech at schools fuels privacy debate." I mean, that's gone on for quite a long while with chips in your body, facial recognition, eye scanning, being x-rayed at airports now. So I just was asking you, is there, I would live my day every day normally, but is there really, I don't notice anything happening to my rights, but is there in essence really something going on with our rights being chipped away at with all these different devices and techniques?
Well, certainly there could be and would be, if there ever is a want to be by somebody who can be. So
I
having
understood
said
that.
all
Why
of
don't you
that,
explain? That made total sense to me, but let's clarify it.
well, I mean, it's been a big struggle throughout the history of any civilization as to what kind of rights we give up for freedoms. And you know, the thing is that they go hand in hand. I mean, without freedom, there are no rights, and without rights, there are no freedoms. You know, the opposite of freedom is captivity. And, you know, as far as security goes, if you are in captivity, then you're pretty secure because you're behind bars and
Nothing can get you.
somebody's feeding you. And so security and freedom, I mean, you know, they go hand in hand. What we got to watch out for is basically our own fears and the people who want to cause fear. I mean, that's what the terrorist is all about. They want to cause fear. And if they can cause enough fear, then we as Americans can sit around and discuss the fact that we're willing to give up freedoms and our rights in order to have security because we're afraid.
I just want to make one thing clear when it comes to the host, me. I will not give up my rights for security. I will take the chance. I will fight it myself if I have to, but I'm not going to give up my rights willingly. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and you know, and that sounds wonderful, but you got to remember, without security, you can't truly be free. I mean, a totally free world would be chaos because you would have no one protecting you. You would have no police force that would stop people from driving 120 miles an hour. You would have nobody to check if the person that was coming at you at 70 miles an hour had been drinking a case of beer. You wouldn't have an opportunity to feel safe in your home because somebody lurking around outside. Now, you might, but most of us might not, because somebody lurking outside is bent on doing bad things to you and your family because there's no protection out there and there's no rules and there's no regulations.
Well, Rick, I totally agree with what you said there. I mean, that's obvious. I'm talking about, I'll give you a perfect example, and I mentioned it off air. When the government is recording or listening into conversations that are going overseas to known areas of terrorism, and so when the call goes over there, or they've got specific people that they're being called, they listen in. And I don't have a problem with that. But it's supposed to be specifically for those people. Then it comes to find out that they're listening to everybody. So it's an invasion of privacy. You could be having a romantic conversation with your significant other and people are listening in on it. And it's just an invasion of privacy. So in that respect, I totally get the checking out the bad people, but then why does it bleed into us? Until there's a reason to do it.
Okay, so who are the bad people? Who are the bad people? Can we identify those bad people?
I would say,
do we look for what? Do we look for maybe a certain kind of gold medallion around their neck? Do we look for a certain tattoo? There are situations where Americans are, at this point, willing to give up certain basic rights in order for us to have security. There are groups of people that are willing to do that. In fact, I think a recent poll said about a third of the United States citizens would be willing to give up some rights in order to have more security. 71% favor required national identification cards, for instance. Some sort of a chip in a card that you have to carry around with you. And, 77% people require would require us all to have smallpox vaccinations. Now, you know, do you want a smallpox vaccination? I think most people probably would want to go ahead and have that done, but it would be a violation of your basic freedoms for that to be required. So you do have people out there that are willing.
Yeah,
30%.
but isn't that something like a smallpox? Couldn't you? I'm bad at this stuff, but couldn't that be for the say? It's a known thing that can cause sickness and possible problems long term, and it would make common sense to stop that.
Well,
But I know what you're going to do. You're going to tell me, well, that bleeds over to something else. Why can't you think of it in a security sense too, right?
well, absolutely, but you're talking about a few situations where someone might get sick from the vaccination versus a situation where millions of people could die if there's no vaccination. So it's a trade-off, just like anything else. You got to look at what is on the table and put one side on one scale and the other side on the other scale.
I guess if we have our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, I don't want anything to affect that, unless, of course, the proper procedures are done in place to modify, change, or correct, and it's done according to the Constitution. It's just when things that are messed with, that are written in our Constitution, on the side is the thing I have the problem with. Now, if the public votes for it and Congress votes for it and it changes the way the Constitution is, okay, now we have a new set of rules, but it's not that way yet. So that's why I'm always fighting.
Well, there's always needs to be a public discourse. There needs to be discussion. There needs to be votes. There needs to be politicians standing up in front of us saying we need to do this, we need to do that. In other words, we need to be informed. It's not like situations where the Chicago police might use their false cell towers to suck in all the cell phone information in a certain area without anybody knowing they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
That was just wrong, and of course now there's proposed legislation to stop that sort of thing because it is an infringement on our right to privacy. Absolutely. But then you got to look at things like fear. Some 4 in 10 Americans are afraid of either themselves or a close family member having a negative impact or effect from terrorists. I mean, that's a pretty good amount of people.
That is.
And of course, that rises whenever there's an event like 9/11 or the San Bernardino attacks. We get scared, and of course, those are the kind of situations that allow the government to change the rules. And one classic example of that was back in the 30s. I think there was the Reichstag fire in Germany. And Hitler was able to convince the people to allow him to become basically an authoritarian, a dictator, if you may. In other words, he became able to just dictate things without I think they call it the legislature back then, without their approval. So we see that same sort of thing happen in the Patriot Act. Fortunately, after things sort of calmed down after 9/11, the Patriot Act has been modified. But of course, it kind of goes along with that old Dutch saying that fear can be a poor counselor. So we're willing to give up stuff that are basic rights because we're afraid of other things. And of course, that goes down all the way from the top, like, a nuclear bomb, all the way down to someone breaking into your home. And all we can really do, and you say this all the time in your radio show, we can just prepare ourselves for those sorts of things. As far as on the top, we need to prepare ourselves with the right leaders. As far as down at the bottom, we need to prepare ourselves by taking courses like you offer.
Thank you for the promo. I appreciate that. I got a class. Got a class today, by the way, at 2:00. There's still about 1 or 2 seats left if you're interested.
Because security is important, and if we feel secure, then that enhances our freedom.
You made a comment though that popped a flag with me. If making judgment based on fear is not good, and that's true, I don't really want to listen to those people or have them vote because of fear. I know that sounds terrible, and I can say what I want because that's my opinion, but I want people who are rational see it for what it is to maintain what we have without getting hysterical and going way overboard. For example, like Australia, they had a school shooting. Now the whole entire continent is not supposed to have guns. I mean, that was overkill. No pun intended.
Well, okay, so
that's for me, Joel. Take it.
Okay.
Got a call. So we got dead here. Are we on the air? That's not for me.
So let me talk about a little bit about freedom versus risk. I mean, in North Korea, they have no terrorist attacks. But I don't want to move
Where's
to
this?
North Korea.
North Korea. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole country. Western United States, Western Europe, and the United States have been struck repeatedly by terrorism. I wouldn't mind living out in California. It's not a bad place.
It's because we let anybody in without legal direction. They just walk across, and you get anybody coming from anywhere doing anything they want.
Well, certainly you and I don't agree about that. I mean, there are a whole lot of Americans that are willing to grant their government extraordinary powers. In other words, to stop what you're talking about and to stop the movement. And they believe that, as they are law-abiding citizens and the other people are not law-abiding citizens, that we just need to stop the other people. And again, who are these other people? They see no contradiction in demanding that the unfettered liberties for themselves while denying basic liberties for other people. I mean, we see that a lot when people talk about, well, our government should protect us by, well, let's just keep out the Muslims, for instance, and then we'd all be secure because terrorism would drop. But right now we're seeing terrorism strikes by people more than just Muslims. I mean, it's happening everywhere by people who you just wouldn't believe would have done it. I mean, you see on the news all the time, well, he was just a regular old Joe that lived. A little bit strange. I mean, yeah, it's easy to say after he just climbed up into a building, shot 150 people. But it's really not something you can put a tag on, is my point.
Something dramatically changed for this to happen here. It was 9/11, and it was the way we handled it. It's the way the news media covered it. It's the way, I guess, 30% of the people were scared to death and pushed it and cried about it instead of just realizing it for what it was and taking care of it. And it's morphed 2 generations now into people being very fearful, and they're just doing crazy things to trying to either relieve themselves, to feel important and get on the news that they've made a mass killing and be remembered in time. I don't know, but it has never been like this.
I can't say that's true because it has been like this in the past. I certainly agree about the news media. It has charged up, but there's been news all along. I mean, and people have been doing crazy things. We may not have heard about some shooting in Maine, for instance, 20 years ago, but it was happening. We just didn't hear about it here in Texas because news media hadn't developed into the 24-hour cycle that it is now. So now we're hearing things almost instantaneously. Our phones have alerts on them. We can check the weather. We can see if there's a thunderstorm over Dallas, like instantaneously, whereas before we had to kind of wait till the 10:30 news.
Rain fell, yeah.
So it is there, and of course that's what I'm talking about. The fear, it allows the fear to grow. But so far, in my opinion at least, I don't think we've given up any substantial rights. Some of the politicians that have made it onto the court system have been a little risky with some of our rights, in my opinion. Of course, I'm a trial lawyer, and some of the rights to trial have been fettered in Texas in particular with regard to the enhancement and engagement of arbitration clauses, which basically eliminate our constitutional right to trial if situations arises. And of course they say, oh, well, this is great because it enhances business opportunities. Well, yeah, of course, it's great for the business. It's wonderful the corporations that put those arbitration clauses in all of the things you sign, like your cell phone agreements, your credit card agreements. Now they're drifting into all the employment agreements. So you're limited to arbitration, and of course the arbitrators, they're going to be going with the people they see every day down at the arbitration building.
Now, you just mentioned a couple of things. Can you off the top of your head mention a couple of other things? You said specifically that you don't see any rights really being taken away, but there are some more so than what you just said there. Can you name anything?
Well, and of course this didn't happen recently, but you know, your car is supposed to be part of your castle, and of course we talk about that here before, how your car is off limits to other people. But the police, the police can check your car now. When they inventory it, if they happen to arrest you, and you know they can arrest you for speeding. I got stopped the other day. The officer said I was going 81. I was going across the bridge out here, and of course I lived here, and I know good and well you don't speed across that bridge.
Right.
You know, you check your check your speedometer and set that sucker on 60, and I could see the police car, you know, like way up there. But you know, I got stopped anyway, and of course I could have been arrested because he said that I was going 81. So they could have impounded my car, and had they done that, they would have been allowed to inventory it.
When you say that in a certain way, what is that?
Inventory it. Yeah, that's what I said.
I know. So explain what that tone means.
Well, you know what it means. It means they can look through your car and
Okay.
inventory it.
Okay. But you know, if you're going 81, isn't there certain levels of speed that you just get a ticket and then it becomes a certain type of crime because you're causing reckless driving, and so then you could be arrested because in a Class C, isn't a Class C a basic traffic stop?
Yeah, I mean that's the way it should be.
So technically, you didn't lose a right if you were speeding that fast. In that particular scenario, he had the potential to arrest you. But
Yeah.
it's the after part where they get to inventory all
Well,
your
I
stuff.
saw a case one time where a young man was up on trial, and I guess I don't remember exactly. I assume that, you know, looking back on it, it's probably he had some marijuana with him or something. But this is a long time ago, and the police officer said, "Well, my probable cause for stopping him was that the window was tinted, and I thought it was tinted too much." And then, you know, like 5 or 10 minutes into the questioning, well, how did you know it was him? Because he said, I know he'd be a bad guy and all that. Well, his window was down, and I saw him when he turned left. So it's like, uh-oh. So, you know, we assume that the police, and it makes us feel safe to assume that, and we all like to feel safe. And it really does bother us when we start thinking the other direction, that things may not be as they should be.
Rick, I've got a list of things here. I don't know if you can do this or not, but I want to make state one of the security procedures. Can you somehow, you think, say how it could potentially lose some rights by using this? I'll give you an example. If there's facial recognition technology out there, how could that take away some of our liberties? Can you foresee anything? Because right now, the way I look at it, if it's on the good side of things, we're just making sure that a known terrorist, didn't sneak through the cracks, and a facial recognition technology could pick them up. But how does it affect us, the law-abiding citizen?
Well, you know, the law-abiding citizen is the person that we're trying to protect, right? Because we want to catch the criminal. There's no doubt about it. And so this technology, in my opinion, is going to be good. Now,
See, I say the
I
same-
may be
say
one
the
of
same
those
thing.
citizens that's willing to give up a little bit of my personal rights.
But what,
in
that's what I'm
order
trying.
to be
That's what I'm trying to
safe.
get at. What right do you think we lose with facial recognition?
Well, our right to privacy.
But you're in a public environment. I'm asking questions like I'm thinking to myself.
I understand.
I'm in a public
Sure.
environment, so anybody could take a picture of anybody in a public environment, can't they?
I agree. Yeah, but then can they identify you and then use that information later to sell you a pair of blue jeans? I mean, that's where we are now. That's where most of this information being picked up is being used for, is for marketing purposes.
I was on that movie with what's his name? I can't even think of the name. I'm at a loss here. Anyway, Tom Cruise. He's walking into the mall, and they recognize his eyes, and they say, "Oh, would you like these pair of pants?" Because they know he's bought pants before. He's just like looking, what the heck's going on here? Okay, let's
Yeah,
talk about.
well, and you know that's not futuristic. That's
Yeah, I know.
that's real world.
What about DNA?
Well, again, you know, if you're a guilty criminal, DNA is going to help us catch that person, and the technology on that is just amazing. For instance, they can pull out a Clovis point that's been in the ground for what, 1,000,000 years, or 300,000 or 60,000 years, and they can identify by the stains the kind of animal that Clovis point had been stuck in.
That is incredible. It
It's
really
just
is.
amazing. So DNA has just really fascinating to me as far as what it's able to do. And,
I-
they're able to identify people now with your DNA, whether you might be susceptible to being fat, whether you might be susceptible to having bad eyes, whether you might be susceptible to being an alcoholic.
Are you aware of any type of program that when you go to your doctor that somehow, some way, whether it's blood, skin, whatever, swab, the DNA is then put in a database of some sort?
It shouldn't be, okay? Kind of like the word inventory.
Yeah, okay.
It shouldn't be
All right, so
without
that,
your permission.
because I've also read and heard that they take this DNA and they can actually manipulate it or somehow make a cure for you, but then you got to pay for this thing. I was reading articles about this a long time ago, and I find that very bothersome that you take my DNA and then you throw it back on me saying, well, we took your DNA to make this, and if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it. I mean, I understand the business aspect of it, but you took it from me without my permission.
Yeah. Well, I guess they just say, well, we're just trying to help.
Yeah.
And of course, then I would say, well, how much does it cost? So,
Yeah, what's it worth to you to live? What about chipping? I know chipping animals is great, and to be honest with you, if my kids were 17, if they were still under 18 years of age, I might chip them. But at 18, it's coming out.
well, I think before you and I leave this earth, we're going to see a lot of people getting chipped. We're already basically chipped with our cell phone, and it's pretty much attached to our body at all the time. So it's in there. I mean, we can go up and pay for our Coca-Cola with a cell phone now, or a cup of Joe over at the Texaco station. It's
I don't know
we're
what-
chipped.
I don't know what all your-
We may not have one in our hand, but I suspect that that's going to be the next move, and it's going to be so convenient.
And it's going to
So
be
convenient.
a nice mark, if you know what I mean. It's going to be a nice one. People are going to have to figure out when that mark happens. Okay, we only got a couple minutes left. What about X-ray scanning at the airports?
Well, I mean, makes me feel all safe to take my shoes off and get X-ray scan and walk on in that safe zone in there.
But we've had many of articles that read that the people who are doing the scanning and they find a hot young lady, they kind of keep the picture and look at it and all that. So that's an invasion of privacy right there. So
Yeah, that's just perversion. we're gonna have the perverts out there. We know that. I could talk all day about that and offend a whole lot of people.
All right. Now I spoke to Ross about this. We were talking about drones, and he made a point that if it's flying over, it just catches you. That's one thing. But if it's hovering over you, why would somebody have the ability to hover? That'd be an invasion of privacy right there, right?
Yeah, it would be, but I mean, it's flying over you and taking pictures. What difference is that than hovering over and taking pictures? I mean, it's picture's a picture.
Well, I mean, a drone's got to go from point A to point B, and it's going to pass over certain things to get to its objective. And in the process, if it's filming everything.
Right.
Whereas somebody's just hovering over you, checking things out. I want to know something. If you
Well,
gotta-
if it goes over and films, it's going to catch whatever's happening at the moment. Now, so I guess Ross may have been suggesting that's just inconsequential because they had to go from point A
Yes.
to point B and film on the way. I mean, we're going to allow that, but on the other hand, if it's actually spying on you, it's still the same picture. It
Rick, I wanna
catches you
know-
in the act, whatever the act may be.
I want to know what you think of this, or if you have any concrete laws you can put to this. But if there's a drone, and I know many people out there are going to want to know the answer to this question. If there's a drone hovering within shotgun range, can I take that sucker down?
Well, you probably wouldn't want to miss.
Well, no, I'd want to make sure I hit it. But what if I shoot this drone hovering over me? What kind of repercussions can I get? Any?
Well, I would suggest that the worst thing that could happen is that you would have to pay for the value of the drone. But on the other hand, I can see a counter suit, if you may, for invasion of privacy.
How high up does invasion of privacy go?
Well, okay, so they've got modern technology now where the satellites that fly over that we never even see can zoom in and see us getting in our pickup trucks.
Mm-hmm. They can read license plates. I know.
Yeah.
Shingles on a roof.
Yeah, so I don't think there is. My point is that I don't think there's a particular height up there. I mean, I think that the FAA has rules about how high these drones can fly, and they really, it's a ceiling. They can't get above that because of the potential danger of aircraft.
Aircraft, yeah.
So I think shotgun range would be about my limit, though.
Okay. All right, Rick. Look, we're just about out of time. If we were to wrap this up, I'm going to say something, and then you say what you think. To maintain our freedom, you have to do certain things to secure it. And there's a borderline of security to lose your freedoms and ones to secure your freedoms. So I guess in this world that we're living in, with all these different techniques, there's boundary lines to each and every one of them. We just have to stay vigilant, make sure we're aware of what's going on, watch, speak up if necessary when things go past that borderline. What do you think, Rick?
Well, that's right. And, you just got to remember that a right is protected by the law. The freedom is protected by the rights. So we got to have the rights in order to have the freedom. And we have to have the laws in order to have the rights. And it just kind of goes around in circles. And the opposite of a right is duty. You have to do something. And sometimes having to do something is not a bad thing. We all think that our duties are important. And the opposite of freedom is captivity. And nobody wants to be a slave.
That's right. Your host is the main one, I think. Okay, Rick, why don't you tell everybody how to get a hold of you, what you do, and then with respect to you, we're going to play
Respect for you. Respect for you. That's what we get is respect for you. And you can look us up on the web under respectforyou.com. You can give us a call here in Cameron. We've been here for 37 years. I can't believe it. I've seen a lot of things happen in Cameron, but mostly nothing.
All right, Rick, I can't thank you enough for helping to sponsor the program. You're a big asset to the show here. People love listening to this segment. I got tons of comments last night at the gun shop, and a lot of people.
Well, I always like to listen to Ross. He's always animated and comes up with some good stuff.
I look at him sometimes. Where'd that come from? All right, let's come out of this segment with respect, and then after a little bit, just play a little bit of that, and then we'll do our commercials, and I'll come back. Okay. See you on the other side.
Thank y'all.
We got dead air.
Here it comes.